It was the warmest house on American television. And behind the scenes, the people who lived in it were fighting battles that no sitcom hug could fix. Full House ran for 8 seasons, raised 3 generations of kids on the idea that family could always work it out in 22 minutes, and ended in 1995 as one of the most watched shows in America. And then the real stories started coming out. One cast member became a methamphetamine addict and lost custody of her daughter before rebuilding her life piece by piece in public. Another dated one of the most famous musicians on the planet and inspired one of the most recognizable breakup albums ever recorded. And the man at the center of it all, the one who tucked America's children into bed every Friday night for 8 years, died alone in a hotel room in Orlando at 65. And the world woke up to the news on a January morning in 2022, still not fully able to believe it. The Full House began in 1987 as a show about grief and found family. It turns out the people who made it knew more about both of those things than any of their characters ever did. Number 1. Jodie Sweetin as Stephanie Tanner. She was the funny one. The middle sister with the perfect comic timing and the catchphrase "how rude" that followed her everywhere. Jodie Sweetin played Stephanie Tanner from age 5 to age 13, and she was remarkable at it, the kind of child actor who made grown adults forget they were watching a child. But here is where it gets really interesting, because the years after Full House ended were the ones nobody talks about in the reruns. Jodie Sweetin went from being one of the most recognizable child actors in America to being, by her own description, completely lost. She married young, she partied hard, and somewhere in her 20s, she began using methamphetamine. But suddenly, something happened, because in 2009, Jodie Sweetin published a memoir called Unsweetened, in which she described her addiction with extraordinary candor. The meth, the alcohol, the marriages that collapsed, losing custody of her daughter Zoe. She did not soften it. She did not frame it as a cautionary tale. She told it as the truth of what had happened to a person who grew up entirely on camera and had no idea who she was when the cameras stopped. But there is more, because Jodie Sweetin got clean. She returned to television for Fuller House, the Netflix continuation that ran from 2016 to 2020, and played Stephanie Tanner again, this time as an adult woman with her own complicated history. She has spoken in interviews about the strange experience of returning to a character she had been at age 5. Now knowing everything she knows, she has remarried. She has her daughter back in her life. In 2026, Jodie Sweetin is 44 years old. She continues to act and speaks openly about recovery to audiences who need to hear it. But while Jodie Sweetin's story became one of the most public recovery journeys in Hollywood, her on-screen sister Candace Bure took a completely different road, one that made her one of the most polarizing figures to ever come out of a Friday night family sitcom. Number 2. Candace Bure as DJ Tanner. She was the responsible one, the oldest Tanner daughter, the one who set the example, the one who made the sensible choices at the end of every episode. Candace Bure played DJ Tanner for all 8 seasons, with the kind of steady, grounded warmth that made her feel like the big sister America did not know it needed. But you know what is even crazier? Candace Bure's post-Full House story is not the one anybody predicted. She married Russian hockey player Valery Bure in 1996, converted to evangelical Christianity, and became increasingly open about how her faith shaped every aspect of her public and private life. She wrote multiple books about Christian womanhood. She became a fixture on The View. She returned for Fuller House. But that is not all, because in late 2022, Candace Bure left Hallmark Channel, where she had been one of the network's biggest stars for years, to join Great American Family, a competing network with an explicitly Christian programming mission. In an interview, she said Great American Family would not shy away from traditional marriage. The comment ignited a firestorm. JoJo Siwa, her former Fuller House co-star, called her one of the rudest celebrities she had ever met. Other cast members stepped back. But there is more, because Candace Bure has never backed down. She has addressed every controversy directly and without apology. Whether you agree with her or not, she is one of the rare former child actors who built an entirely second career on her own terms, and the terms were entirely her own. In 2026, Candace Bure is 50 years old. She continues to produce and star in films for Great American Family. But if Candace Cameron Bure became a lightning rod for what she believed, John Stamos became a lightning rod for something else entirely. Because the man who played the coolest uncle on television spent years building an image of effortless cool. And then the cracks started showing in ways that were far more human than anyone expected. Number 3. John Stamos as Jesse Katsopolis. He was the coolest man on Friday night television. Jesse Katsopolis, the leather jacket-wearing, Elvis-loving, impossibly handsome musician who moved into the Tanner house and accidentally became a father figure. John Stamos played him for all 8 seasons as a man who never quite grew up, which turned out to be exactly what the show needed. He was also, by every account, genuinely that charming in real life, which made what came later harder to explain. But here is where it gets really interesting, because John Stamos' personal life has always been more turbulent than his camera-ready exterior suggested. He married actress Rebecca Romijn in 1998. They divorced in 2005, and the split was painful. Romijn moved on and had twins with actor Jerry O'Connell within 2 years. Stamos has been candid about how much that cost him. But suddenly, something happened, because in 2015, John Stamos was arrested for driving under the influence in Beverly Hills. He entered a rehabilitation program. He spoke about it publicly afterward, with more openness than Hollywood stars typically allow themselves. "I had some personal things going on in my life," he said in interviews. "I did not deal with it well. But there is more because John Stamos rebuilt." He married actress Caitlin Michoud in 2018. Their son Billy was born the same year. He returned for Fuller House. He published a memoir, If You Would Have Told Me, in 2023, which became a bestseller and addressed his drinking, his divorce, and the specific loneliness of being the most handsome man in any room for 30 years. In 2026, John Stamos is 62 years old. He continues to act and tours occasionally with the Beach Boys, with whom he has played since the 1980s. But John Stamos at least got to tell his own story. Dave Coulier's most famous story was told by someone else in 11 tracks on one of the best-selling albums of the 1990s, by a woman named Alanis Morissette, who was absolutely furious. Number 4. Dave Coulier as Joey Gladstone. He was the funny one, the one who did the voices Bullwinkle, Popeye, the Looney Tunes characters that made the Tanner girls dissolve into giggles. Dave Coulier played Joey Gladstone for 8 seasons as a man who had never quite grown up and found that this was, somehow, his greatest professional asset. He was warm, he was silly. He was completely inoffensive. And then Alanis Morissette released Jagged Little Pill in 1995. But you know what is even crazier? Dave Coulier and Alanis Morissette dated in the early 1990s. She was significantly younger than him. The relationship ended. And then she wrote one of the most commercially successful albums in the history of recorded music, which contained a song called You Oughta Know, A Scorched Earth, barely contained fury of a breakup anthem. And for 30 years, the question of whether Dave Coulier was the subject of that song has followed him everywhere he goes. But there is more, because Dave Coulier eventually confirmed it. In a 2021 interview, he acknowledged that the song was about him, that he had heard it for the first time on the radio and immediately known, and that he had called Alanis to apologize. "I just was not ready to be the person she needed me to be," he said. He has handled the notoriety with more grace than most men in his position might have managed. But suddenly something happened, because in 2023, Dave Coulier was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He announced it publicly and began treatment. His Full House co-stars rallied around him publicly. He completed chemotherapy and in 2024 announced he was in remission. In 2026, Dave Coulier is 66 years old. He continues to perform stand-up comedy and makes occasional television appearances. But if Dave Coulier's story was told in someone else's songs, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen's story was told in a way that was entirely their own, by simply disappearing, at the height of their fame, into a world that had almost nothing to do with the one that made them. Number 5. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen as Michelle Tanner. They shared one role between them, The producers rotated Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen through the part of Michelle Tanner to comply with child labor laws, which meant that from infancy to age 9, 2 girls split one character. And the world never knew the difference. Michelle Tanner became one of the most beloved characters on the show, and the Olsen twins became, by their early 20s, a $2 billion entertainment empire. But here is where it gets really interesting, because at the precise moment when they could have leveraged their name into an acting dynasty, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen stopped acting entirely. They declined to appear in Fuller House. They turned down the Netflix revival without explanation. They pivoted completely to fashion founding the Row and Elizabeth and James, high-end labels that earned the kind of critical respect in the fashion world that their acting careers had never quite achieved. But suddenly, something happened that the world only learned about slowly, because in 2004, Mary-Kate Olsen was hospitalized for an eating disorder. The details emerged publicly against her will. She was 18. The coverage was relentless and frequently cruel. She has spoken very little about it in the years since, and when she has, it has been with the specific exhaustion of someone who has been required to account for a private illness in public. But there is more. Because in 2015, Mary-Kate married French banker Olivier Sarkozy, who was 17 years her senior. They divorced in 2020, with the divorce proceedings becoming briefly public and messy in a way that Mary-Kate clearly did not want. Ashley has remained intensely private. The Row continues to be regarded as one of the most quietly prestigious fashion houses in America. In 2026, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen are 39 years old. They have not acted since 2012, the Row shows at Paris Fashion Week. But the hardest story in the Full House family, the one that arrived without warning on a January morning in 2022 and left everyone who had ever watched this show suddenly and completely blindsided, belongs to Bob Saget. Because Danny Tanner tucked America in for 8 years, and then Bob Saget died alone in a hotel room and nobody understood it. Number 6. Bob Saget as Danny Tanner. He was the father, the one who had lost his wife before the pilot episode began and had to figure out how to raise 3 daughters with the help of his brother-in-law and his best friend. Bob Saget played Danny Tanner for 8 seasons as a man defined by his decency. Neat, warm, occasionally overbearing, always present. He was the center that the whole show orbited. He was also, in real life, one of the filthiest stand-up comedians in America, known for material so dark and explicit that it seemed almost impossible it came from the same man who tucked the Tanner girls in every Friday night. But you know what is even crazier? Bob Saget was never confused about which version of himself was real. He was both. The warmth of Danny Tanner was genuine. The people who worked with him said so consistently, including every cast member of Full House who ever spoke about him publicly. And the darkness of his stand-up was just as genuine. He lived happily in the contradiction and did not feel the need to explain it to anyone. But here is where it gets really interesting, because Bob Saget's career after Full House was a long, deliberate act of self-reclamation. He hosted America's funniest home videos. He appeared as himself in Entourage. He voiced the future version of Ted Mosby in How I Met Your Mother for 9 seasons. He returned for Fuller House. And he kept touring as a stand-up, performing into his 60s the material that had nothing whatsoever to do with the Tanner family. But suddenly, something happened that nobody was prepared for, because on January 9, 2022, Bob Saget was found unresponsive in his hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando, Florida. He had performed a stand-up show the night before. By all accounts, it had gone well. He was 65 years old. The medical examiner later determined that he had suffered a traumatic brain injury, consistent with a fall or an accidental strike to the head, and that he had gone to sleep without realizing how seriously he was hurt. The grief that followed was not the kind that Hollywood grief usually is. It was real and immediate, and spread across generations. His Full House co-stars posted tributes within hours. John Stamos was inconsolable. Candace, Bure, and Jodie Sweetin posted photographs. The cast of How I Met Your Mother went quiet. And tens of millions of people who had grown up watching Danny Tanner be the dad they wished they had felt the loss in a way they had not expected. In a statement after his death, his wife Kelly Rizzo wrote, "He was everything to us, and we want you to know how much he loved his fans." He is survived by his 3 daughters from his first marriage, Aubrey, Laura, and Jennifer, and by a legacy that spans decades of television and an entire generation of American children who will never fully separate the man from the character he played. Full House was designed to make you feel safe. It was a show about a house full of people who loved each other enough to work through anything, and it did that job better than almost any show before or since. Critics dismissed it. The audience did not care. Millions of families watched it every Friday night for 8 years and felt, for 22 minutes, that everything was going to be okay. There is only one original Full House, and the people who made it were far more complicated, far more human, and far more worth knowing than any of their characters ever got to be.